Let me switch to another issue that has been coming up in a lot of the testimony, and that's challenges in the Arctic. You know, the Russians are making a very bold, in many ways, very definitive move into the Arctic with building several new airfields. General Dempsey mentioned in his testimony with Secretary Carter recently the Russians are looking at increasing brigades up to 6 brigades, 4 of which will be based in the Arctic. And in terms of new icebreakers, they have a fleet of 40, 6 new ones, 5 additionally planned. I think we're number 5 in the country in terms of icebreakers. So, you know, we put out pieces of paper on the Arctic while the Russians are literally moving very aggressively in the Arctic. I'll just throw this out for both of you gentlemen. You know, I was a little disappointed to see Expeditionary Force 21 had, I don't think, a single sentence on the Arctic. And the Marine Corps, as you know, General, has a proud history of being the kind of northern flank protector in terms of Norway and other places and previous op plans. What are the thoughts on the Arctic, and are there any thoughts with regard to the Navy's budget to have an icebreaker? I mean, this is going to be a critical area. The Russians are eyeing it and moving into it, and yet we seem to be, at least from the Army's perspective, looking at removing combat brigades from Alaska, which I think would send a really, really bad signal to Vladimir Putin and others. So if you'd wish to comment just on your thoughts on the Arctic, both of you gentlemen. Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I went a little long.
If I could, on Expeditionary Force 21, when we wrote the document, we knew that it was going to require updates, and our plan is to do updates annually here, and we've got one that's due to the Commandant here within the next few months. So that's one of the updates I'm sure that we'll put some attention on. I was just out at the Mountain Warfare Center here about just a couple of weeks ago, and that's where we do a lot of our cold weather training up there. And one of our companies was actually coming out of the field from being up there for about 10 days and looking at the equipment, and I had an opportunity to talk to the commander up there as well and about the equipment that they have, and quite frankly, we need to do better. And you know, he is the actual advocate for cold weather training, and so I tasked him to make sure that he looks at what we need to be able to update ourselves, to be able to have that a good capability, a solid capability in cold weather operations, and the training that was going to be required in the doctrine. Thank you.
Senator King.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I'd like to associate myself with your comments both today and yesterday about Afghanistan. It would be absolutely tragic if we squandered the success that we have achieved and that the Afghan people have achieved by prematurely pulling out according to some date on a calendar. To me, it's equivalent of fumbling on the 5-yard line. With a modest additional investment and particularly of authority to the troops that are there, I think we can secure a really significantly brighter future for the people of Afghanistan. So I agree. Also, in terms of the Arctic, we have one heavy icebreaker, Coast Guard. We have one that's old that we're essentially out of service, and one medium icebreaker, and that's the highway of the Arctic if you think about it. And I agree with the Senator from Alaska. This is a major area where the Russians are moving very aggressively, and I think we need to take account of that. But also, we just need to take account of the importance that this region is going to have, both in terms of energy, commerce, trade, transit. They may not get all the way to Mississippi, but it's important to the entire country. So I agree with that, Mr.